Hello, everybody. My name is Ben, and welcome to the Shanked Field Goal Podcast. I'm here with my boy, Miles.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing great. How about yourself?
Fantastic.
Awesome. So how this is going to work is I have a Tupperware bowl full of all the teams, and when one is picked, I have the AFC, Miles has the NFC. When one of the teams is picked, whoever has that team in their respective conference is going to give 40 seconds to a minute of analysis on the team, and then the other person has a chance to respond. So, with that, let's get straight into it. How you feeling, Miles?
Really good. Been prepping for this and excited to talk football again.
All right, well, let's shake the teams around just so we get a solid team to start off with. And, we got the Houston Texans, so that would be from the AFC South.
Yeah, that'll be you.
That would be me. So the Texans are definitely a Super Bowl contender this year. They went 12-4 last year. They have a solid defense with Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt back there, always solid. They have Deshaun Watson with Lamar Miller and Deontay Foreman as running backs, and DeAndre Hopkins as their top wide receiver. They have another safety in Jonathan Joseph. One big thing is they lost Tyrann Mathieu this year, but to free agency to the Kansas City Chiefs, but I still see that this team is solid. Success comes by improving their O-line and linebacker play, but they have some solid weapons, and they address the issue of the O-line in the draft by drafting an offensive tackle, Titus Howard. So, Miles, after that, do you agree with my Super Bowl contender pick for the Texans?
Yeah, I actually do. 12-4 is a great start last season to, I think, what can be a really strong franchise if they're able to continue to keep Deshaun Watson healthy this season, coming back and working with DeAndre Hopkins, who's probably one of the top wide receivers in the NFL once again this year. And if they can keep that working and Lamar Miller is able to be solid enough running back for them, then this team has a pretty high ceiling in an AFC South that sometimes looks pretty suspect. So it's going to be an interesting year for them.
Yeah, that's right. The AFC South is certainly one of the more competitive divisions in football this year. And even if Lamar Miller doesn't pan out, they still have Deontay Foreman, who they picked up from Atlanta this year in the offseason. So let's get straight into the next team, shaking it around. Okay, the Tennessee Titans, another AFC South team. Wow,
Speaking
look at that.
of them, yeah.
Look at that. So, the Titans have a solid offense. They have Marcus Mariota with Derrick Henry. Obviously, everybody remembers that 99-yard touchdown he scored last year. They have a great O-line backed up by Taylor Lewan, their star left tackle. And they have some good players on defense, too, with Jarrell Casey and Kevin Byard, who led the league in interceptions last year and the year before. Success comes with improving wide receivers and linebackers. The main thing I can say for that is, can you tell me any one of their wide receivers?
No.
Okay, yeah. I had one of them as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, and that's about how I know about Taywan Taylor. But linebackers, can't really name one of those either, so that's one of their weak spots. Another thing based on the coaching standpoint is since Mariota has been there, they haven't really adapted their scheme to fit Mariota. They have adapted Mariota to fix their scheme, and I don't think Mariota's at his best when he's playing in this more sort of, he's not able to scramble system, because he's not a pocket quarterback, and he doesn't really have to scramble with such a good offensive line. So I'd like to see him roll out of the pocket more and maybe help out his wide receivers, maybe make them a little better by rolling out.
Potentially push more option plays, more of the ability to use the strong 2 sets of legs they've got there in the backfield between him and their running back to bring the offense a little more threat and maybe make those wide receivers something more to be feared, to be known.
Correct, yeah. I'd really like to see more of a West Coast offense style going on there, but Mike Vrabel, their coach, is obviously a linebacker, former
Very
linebacker for the Patriots.
defensive-minded, correct.
So,
Patriots and worked with the Texans organization previously, yeah.
That's right. All right, so let's get into this team here. And we got the Atlanta Falcons. Miles, you want to take this one?
Yeah, coming over to the NFC. Talking about the Atlanta Falcons, of course, the top player anyone's going to talk about is Matty Ice, Matt Ryan, under center for the Atlanta Falcons. Passing last year, had a solid enough year, but he's going to look to continue to push his team forward. They have solid running back options between Devontae Freeman and... No, they don't anymore.
They don't have Devontae Freeman. They
That's right.
He went to the Texans. And, a big player for their offense, of course, is Julio Jones. You can't forget him.
Of course. It's Julio, Mohamed Sanu. Those are going to be options for Matt Ryan continuing forward into the next season.
Even Calvin Ridley, lots of defenses fear him. Saw what he could do against Philadelphia last year.
That's correct.
Lots of long catches.
Defensively, they're going to be looking to play around their secondary. Desmond Trufant's been big. Robert Alford as well has been maturing for them also. So it's going to be a team that also is going to look to see Vic Beasley continue to be good off the edge. And in that NFC South, I think their main competition really is the Saints. And if they can't get past them, they're going to have a tough year. I think they need to push their offense even further without Devontae Freeman in the mix now. It's going to be less easy for them to just hand off to him and Tevin Coleman every other play and then have Matt Ryan throw a bomb once every week to Julio Jones. They're going to have to bring Julio back into the offense and get him red zone action. Last year it was infamous how long he went without a touchdown, and that's got to change if they want to win games.
That's right. And another team in their division to watch out for is the Carolina Panthers as well. They're a solid team that can do some damage, but Atlanta should probably be pushing for the playoffs, do you think?
I think so. 7-9 is pretty low for them. That was what they ended up at last year, and I think Dan Quinn's a good coach and will probably bring them. I think they have about a 10-win season, which could push a wild card, but the NFC's so competitive that if they don't really, really improve, I think about 10 wins is their cap this year, unless they do something special.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right as well. And I actually never said where I thought the Titans were going to finish for the last one. I think, the classic Titans, 7-9, 8-8. That's about what to expect again this year, I would say. So now moving on into the next team. Give it a good shake. The Detroit Lions out of the Motor City.
The Motor City Kitties, yes. So for Detroit, obviously their offense runs through Matt Stafford. Everything in this offense runs through him. He needs to have a career year, I think, to bring this team back from some struggles in the last season. They were 6-10 last year, and 2018 was below average in pretty much every category for Stafford. I think they're going to want to look to push Kerryon Johnson as much as they can in just 10 games. He got into the offense, carried the ball 118 times for 641 yards, and had 200 yards receiving. He's going to be a big part of their threat and potentially be a new Theo Riddick in terms of being a running and passing threat. And then Kenny Golladay was pleasantly surprising. Stafford's new best bud caught 70 passes, 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 13 starts. So he could do some damage. And on the defensive side, they have a surprisingly kind of underrated defense with Gerard Davis cresting 100 tackles in just his second year. Darius Slay is their lone Pro Bowler in the secondary. And Damon Harrison in the middle is a huge run stuffer and potential threat in the passing game to get to the passer. So they're really going to need to make use of a strong defensive draft class. Austin Bryant from Clemson, I think, was a huge pick for them to have as a new edge rusher, as Ziggy Ansah's been up and down in the past couple of years. And
Ziggy might leave this year.
Exactly. So having more options there is huge. And then they just got to figure out their offense. Are they going to be a running team through Kerryon Johnson, or are they going to be primarily passing with Golladay and the other options they have?
Yep, and some of those other options, Marvin Jones Jr.,
Sure.
Solid wide receiver there. And actually, I really like their first-round draft pick out of Iowa. They got T.J. Hawkinson for a tight end, so much much. Well, I mean, when can you say they had a good tight end? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
So to have Hawkinson, I think, will really help their offense. And now Matthew Stafford has another option to throw to, which he's needed. I think one of their weaknesses, though, is offensive line. Obviously, allowing 10 sacks to the Vikings last year was a tough one, and they didn't really try to improve it. So I think
It could be another problem year. Yep.
And that's certainly something to watch out for. So where are you thinking they'll finish?
I think they still stay in the basement of the NFC North. I think 7 wins or so is all they're going to be able to manage when they're up against such stiff competition twice a year between the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers.
Certainly. I certainly agree with you there. And now the next team, we have the Buffalo Bills out of the AFC East. So I will be taking that one. There's actually not much to look forward to with this team. They're starting to build around Josh Allen, who is a solid quarterback. The main wide receiver they have is Kelvin Benjamin. They have 3 really old running backs right now, TJ Yeldon, Frank Gore, and LaShawn McCoy. So quite old there. I looked on defense and can't recognize any of their players, so that's a yikes from me. Success comes with getting a top 5 pick for next year. I think this team is one of the bottom teams in the league. It'll be fun to watch Josh Allen, but when he's running for his life at 6'5", it's going to be tough on his knees. So try and keep him up and get a solid player next year in the draft. They're one of my bottom of the cellar teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, Lorenzo Alexander and Tre'Davious White, I think, are their best players on defense, and those names don't exactly, bring everyone to the table saying, "Oh my gosh, who's that? That's my favorite defensive player in the league." They are obviously in a division with the Patriots, and anytime you're there, that's your whole situation is, can I get past Tom Brady and the Patriots? And I think they're going to continue to lose.
Yep, most certainly. All right, moving on to the next team. All right, the New York Giants.
All right, the New York Giants, the most infamous team in the offseason for their seemingly out-of-nowhere trade of Odell Beckham Jr.
That's right.
To the Cleveland Browns. I thought that was probably one of the worst moves by a GM in the last decade in the NFL. Moving him, especially after saying you wouldn't move him, was a huge mistake, and they're going to have a lot of ground to make up because now not having your top wide receiving threat is going to put Eli Manning in a position where he's pretty much just looking at the end of his career down the barrel because of the pickup of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones. See, why do they take him number 6? Nobody even knows who he is.
I mean, in 10 years, if he turns out to be a great quarterback, it doesn't matter if you picked him at 6 or 17. I actually really like that pick. He struggled with so much adversity at Duke. I mean, Duke isn't really a football school, and he still found a way to shine there, despite his receivers dropping pretty much every open pass. So I think he could be a good player, but those trades were awful.
I think the shining light, though, is Saquon Barkley. He was unbelievable in his rookie year and only has up to go. So I think that this offense, if they start to center around a rushing attack and push Saquon to the max, then they can either let Eli teach or potentially even bring in their number 6 draft pick if Eli continues to decline in performance, because he's certainly not Super Bowl MVP anymore.
Oh, for sure. And thankfully in those trades, they at least tried to upgrade their offensive line, which was pretty atrocious last year. So at least they made moves there.
I agree. And defensively, Landon Collins is a stellar player along with Michael Thomas. So they've got some pieces, but it's going to be tough in that division with the Eagles and Cowboys.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And where are you seeing them? Any chance of making the playoffs?
No.
Okay.
I see no chance of the playoffs.
Are they in the cellar? Are they trying to get that top 5 pick next year?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to have another down year and look to continue to restock. They're in pretty much rebuild mode. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gettleman go.
I would not be surprised either. And next team, the Cleveland Browns. and right after the New York Giants too. Wow, could you have wrote that any better?
He did mix it up. I did see that. That was completely random.
All right, so the Browns in the AFC North, lots of competition in that division this year. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick last year, has been solid. They now have Odell Beckham Jr. with his childhood buddy Jarvis Landry. They have Denzel Ward on defense. They're pretty weak at linebacker, though. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt at linebacker. You need to choose between one of those guys because they both deserve to be starters. One of their problems is a weak O-line, and they made it even worse by trading Ziegler to the New York Giants to get Olivier Vernon, but I still think you need to get Olivier Vernon to pair him up with Myles Garrett. The secondary is pretty good. The front four is pretty good. They're a little weak at linebacker, and they're a little weak on the O-line, but success comes by gaining offensive chemistry with the new players. Obviously, Odell is a big ego in the locker room. The head coach doesn't have much experience, Freddie Kitchens, but this team could certainly be exciting. I'm not saying that they're a Super Bowl contender. I think they're in the playoff hunt, probably 9-7, 10-6 area around there. And if they get chemistry, who knows what can happen from there. But we're Vikings fans. We saw what new players do to your system. And it could take some time to get this team developed and playing in the way that we all believe that they can.
I actually think they have more success out of the gate. I think they're an 11-win minimum team, and if not, then something has gone terribly wrong. I think Baker Mayfield and that crazy new duo is going to be offensively really, really strong. I think right away. I think Odell makes any other option on your team a bigger threat because every eye goes to him instantly, and Jarvis Landry will catch anything in the zip code. So I think it's going to be a fun offense to watch for me.
It certainly could be. Their defense is still a little weak, though, for me to put them as a Super Bowl contender, and their offensive line can struggle at times. But lots of competition from the Ravens in that AFC North, and maybe even the Steelers. You never know. They could come back out of the waters and find a way, as they seem to always do, win that division. All right, now for the next team, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Miles.
All right, the Bucs. Well, I'll confess, coming into this one, the Bucs are a team that I don't pay much attention to. I don't think almost anyone outside of Tampa Bay does, and that's kind of unfortunate probably for them. But I think it's a product of a 5-11 season. When you're a team that your head coach was Dirk Cotter, you're at 5-11, your best running back is Peyton Barber, and then literally no one, and you're having quarterback competitions between Jameis Winston eating W's and Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's a team that was very dysfunctional last year, and they're going to need to have a lot more rigor this year. I think giving Jameis the full season, no matter what happens, continuing to let him and Mike Evans be a threat offensively is going to be the big part for them about whether they do well or not. I think defensively, they have a lot to be happy about. Levante David is an incredible linebacker. Jason Pierre-Paul and Brent Grimes in the defensive secondary. He's a beast. So they do have defensive options and ways to win games through defense. But they're going to need more than one touchdown a game from Mike Evans. They're going to need a more structured offense and a more consistent offense, in my opinion.
That's right. I think they're a little weak on the offensive line, which has hurt Jameis his whole career pretty much. But they could have gotten the best player in this year's draft with Devin White out at LSU. He's a solid linebacker to replace Quan Alexander, who they lost to the San Francisco Giants. That'll be a big loss for them. I think Devin White can fill that void, though.
I think as a fan, though, you might be a little sad looking at their first 5 picks. They're all defense. You might have wanted to see a tight end slip in there or a wide receiver option or even a running back to kind of kick in some life to them. But you never know. They're round 6, 36 pick. Scott Miller is a wide receiver. Maybe he is a low round pick that can do some damage or potentially an undrafted free agent. But I think they still need more pieces on offense to support Mike Evans.
Correct. And what are your thoughts? 5 wins again, or is it less than that?
It's somewhere between 4 and 6.
Okay. I certainly agree with you there. Not much going down in Tampa Bay.
Remember, we can take some seconds between topics. We don't have to go at a breakneck speed.
Oh yeah, I did forget about that.
Don't worry about it.
But the next team, the Cincinnati Bengals, another team out of the AFC North. Quarterback Andy Dalton. They have a good running back in Joe Mixon. They finally got that position sorted. They have A.J. Green, obviously an insane player. They have Tyler Eifert coming off of injury at tight end. Tyler Boyd as a wide receiver 2 is incredible, almost what Juju Smith-Schuster was able to do with Antonio Brown. Tyler Boyd with A.J. Green is a great pairing, and hopefully their new offensive tackle that they just drafted, Jonah Williams, will help them out protecting Andy Dalton. He's needed that for a long time. On the defensive side of the ball, Sam Hubbard is a great defensive end that they picked up last year out of Ohio State. He was a great draft pick, but saying that they lost Vontaze Burfict and they lost a lot of the good players on their defense, so that is a very weak area for them. This honestly might be an exciting team to watch for their offense, but it's just a case of, they're the New Orleans Saints where they do a lot of scoring, no defense, but they're just worse. So
yeah, exactly. And you never know who's going to get suspended next on that defense as well.
That is very true. They're another one of my teams who are on the bottom of the cellar. Probably 5 wins maximum, maybe 6 if they're lucky. And I think it's going to be a case of, taking another offensive lineman, or everybody else in the draft took their defensive players this year. So maybe you go for that next year and get some good defense there. All right, and the next team we got is the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Dallas. America's team, as my television would have me believe. They were 10-6 last year, had a pretty solid season behind Zeke Elliott, the best six-pack in football. He had a rushing title, picking up 1,400 yards on the ground and 2,000 total as he picked up nearly 600 yards in the passing game as well. He is their best player. I think he's better than Dak Prescott and a bigger threat on the offense, but obviously any team runs through their quarterback. You don't get the ball to Zeke without it touching Dak's hands first. And I think as we've seen Dak the last few years, I think Jerry Jones got away with one of his trademark risky picks when it comes to Dak, because early on there was a lot of speculation about if he's going to get into trouble or if he's going to be the kind of kid that can stay in the NFL, and I think he has. Last year put up a big year with 3,800 yards passing and 300 on the ground and 28 total touchdowns. And their recent pickup of Amari Cooper during the middle of the season last year is going to bring a huge threat to the offense now that Des Bryant is off in La La Land somewhere. So I think there's a lot to look for in this offense to have them at the top of this division. I think that they can be better than the Eagles if Zeke continues to have another really big year. Defensively, their rookie Leighton Vander Esch was a huge surprise, playing in their nickel scheme where they always have basically 2 linebackers on the field. He was huge both in the passing game, picking up 7 pass breakups and 2 interceptions, and had 140 tackles, 102 of them by himself, in all sorts of situations, whether it was in the run game or the pass. I think he's a bright young star for them. And DeMarcus Lawrence, big money, and even though he underwent surgery in the offseason, I think he'll be good to go by the time the season rolls around and continue to wreck opposing offensive lines.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. They have a great offensive line too that Zeke can run behind as well. And the one thing I will say about Dallas is they don't really have a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, and they're a little suspect at tight end too. Jason Witten is coming back, obviously, so we'll see how that pans out. But Cole Beasley left in free agency, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect that offense. It could be pretty tough.
I think it's just they're a ground and pound team if I've ever seen one. I think they give the ball to Zeke 300 times behind that offensive line and just try and grind people down, and then look to just open the top end with Amari every so often. And I think that's going to be enough, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, obviously with the Redskins and the Giants in your division, that's about 4 free wins every year for Dallas.
Yep.
So you said they're going to win the division,
I
most
think
likely.
so. I think so. I think they can be better than the Eagles here.
So something like 10-6, 11-5?
I think 11-5 or even 12-4 is a good year.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see it happening with that offensive line. All right, and of course, one of the teams talked about most right before the draft, the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, with that number 1 pick, Miles, what can you give me?
Yeah, absolutely. The Cardinals were the big team to be in the offseason when everyone wants your number when you have the number 1 overall draft pick, and everyone was wondering whether they would continue to stay with Josh Rosen and give him a chance to develop, or if new coach Cliff Kingsbury would decide to go with Kyler Murray with the number 1 overall pick. They obviously did choose to go with Kyler. They have moved Josh Rosen. He'll be with the Dolphins this year and potentially have some room to grow there, and I'll let you talk about that when we get to the Dolphins, but I think Kyler Murray is going to be pretty good. I don't think he's going to be the next
Patty Mahomes.
Yeah, I don't think he quite has what Mahomes has. Because of his split in sports, I think he potentially wasted some time when he could have devoted to one or the other and been really, really good, and I think that'll just hurt his development and push his time back in terms of when he can be great. But I think he's a good pick. And this offense is going to live and die by what Cliff can do with him.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the big things with the multi-sport athletes is, another player who's done it well is Russell Wilson. Obviously a great baseball player. Those two seem to go hand in hand. But another guy to look at, David Johnson. He is a solid running back out of Northern Iowa who can do a job there. And then they have a great wide receiver core. That's
absolutely true. Larry Fitzgerald's a veteran who continues to keep coming back season after season. He apparently never wants to retire. And J.J. Nelson's been big as well and is continuing to grow as a wide receiving threat on the edge to take the top off defenses. And like you said, David Johnson is a huge, huge part of the offense for Kyler Murray to fall back onto as both a safety option for quick out passes, and David can turn that into anything just about, or just being a primarily rushing team and trying to work Kyler into the offense slow.
Yep. One of my problems with them is that they had a great draft class as far as players. Hakeem Butler at wide receiver is great to go along with Christian Kirk, and they're stacked at wide receiver. But where's the offensive line? That was so bad last year for Rosen. I feel bad for him. And Kyler Murray is not going to get helped by that. But looking on defense, they picked up Terrell Suggs from the Ravens, and they have Patrick Peterson. But other than that, anything else going on down there?
I'm a fan of Antoine Bethea. I think he's a great safety and kind of takes the place of Tyrann Mathieu as the leader of that defense. And they've still got Chandler Jones as well, and Gerald Hodges is a big part too, coming from the Buccaneers. So I think they're a defense that's good enough to keep up with their rivals in their division, but I think it's going to be a growing year, and I don't think it's anything to be concerned about if they have an 8-win season, but they could surprise and pick up a few more. But I think around 8 feels right to me, and nothing to be mad at Cliff Kingsbury about if they do only pull off 8.
That's very true, but we have seen how difficult it is to get wins with a horrible offensive line. So we'll see if that takes an effect. But I like the 8-win pick. Kyler Murray's going to have a field day if he gets some time. That's all I can say. Okay, and the next team we got is the Oakland Raiders. And, obviously this is their last season in Oakland before they move to Las Vegas, so this could be an interesting year for them. And, it may be interesting because they're moving. It's not going to be because of their play on the field, that's for sure. Derek Carr at QB, I like him, but I don't think he's, an elite quarterback. They picked up Josh Jacobs out of Alabama with their draft pick. Needed a running back to replace Marshawn Lynch. They did get Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams in free agency to replace Amari Cooper. I really like the pickup of Tyrell Williams for the deep ball for Derek Carr, but Antonio Brown is just a great player, but we'll see how he phases in with that offense. They lost Jared Cook at tight end, which is a big loss there, but they did pick up Vontaze Burfict on their defense. And Cleveland Farrell was their 4th pick overall.
Big fan of that pick, actually. I think anyone you're picking up off of Clemson's defense this year or last year in the draft was always worthwhile. And I think he'll be a big part of replacing what they lost with Khalil Mack.
Yep, and they also picked up Jonathan Abrams out of Mississippi State as a safety in the first round as well. I liked all 3 of their first-round picks, but you can't replace Khalil Mack. They needed him. They still need him. They're going to regret that forever, I think. But, I mean, if you get some chemistry in that offense, win a few games, and I think you're looking at another top 5 pick next year. And maybe, they take Justin Herbert out of Oregon at QB to replace Derek Carr because he's getting a little old. And they also need offensive line help, so they can look to fix that next year. They're another bottom-of-the-cellar team. We seem to be getting a lot of those in the AFC. But you're certainly looking for a top 5 pick next year, Oakland. And they'll be the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think that's fair.
All right, the next team, the Seattle Seahawks. Speaking of Russell Wilson and dual threat sports.
Yeah, absolutely. The Seahawks signed Russell Wilson to a massive new contract this offseason at the last possible moment before he said that he wouldn't potentially negotiate any more deals if they didn't do it by a certain time. They did get that in, so they will continue to have Russell Wilson as a Seahawk probably for the remainder of his career at this point, I think. And if you're a Seattle fan, you're super, super happy about that. I think Russell Wilson is easily in the elite quarterback class. They are perennial Super Bowl contenders. Even after the Legion of Boom has kind of started to fall apart a little bit in terms of not being able to keep everyone on that defense, they still have a ton to look forward to. Tyler Lockett is an insane talent. He can do everything on offense. You can give it to him on jet sweeps or send him deep. You can even treat him as a running back if you want to. And I think unlocking that is going to be the key to their offense again this year. Chris Carson was pretty good at running back, and we'll see if he can continue to produce this year. That's always been weird for them, is pretty much running backs by committee ever since Marshawn Lynch left. So we'll see if they can continue to have a committee work or if they will kind of center on Chris Carson. And defensively, they still have all-pro Bobby Wagner, still a huge part of that defense. Trey Flowers is young and good on the back end as well. So they've got pieces, and they've always got Russell Wilson. I think if they can hope to protect him for more than 2.5 seconds on any given play, that's going to be the key to their offense. If they can't do that, I think they struggle versus good defenses. And in the draft, I scroll through, the first offensive lineman I see is a guard at pick 124. I'm not a big fan of that. I think picking a defensive end at 29 was a mistake when there's great players available.
Certainly, they could have replaced Earl Thomas with the next pick, DeAndre Baker, which would have been great. Or they could have improved their offensive line. But I do like the pickup of DK Metcalf with the last pick in the second round.
Yeah, actually, good receiving threat out of Mississippi, and we'll see what he can do because I think he's plug and play.
Certainly.
Ending up, I think they probably finish. You have to say they finish at the top of the standings, but with the 49ers, I think
and the Rams.
Yeah, I think they end up potentially third in this division, unless they figure out that offensive line situation, either by coaching or some kind of free agent situation or a trade.
Certainly. I'd agree with that. All right. The next team, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. So I will get straight into one of the most fun teams in the league. The Chiefs are certainly a Super Bowl contender again. My one problem with them is they didn't get better from the draft. They picked up guys that are going to be backups if people get injured. But the Chiefs have enough talent to succeed for sure. With Patrick Mahomes, obviously won MVP last year, cover of Madden 20. Ooh, the Madden curse could occur again. Ooh, spooky. Tyreek Hill as the number one wide receiver struggles with him in his legal battles going on. Travis Kelce is probably the best tight end in the league now with Gronk out of the game. Damian Williams at running back did okay after Kareem Hunt got hurt, but picking up Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu really helped their defense because that is the area where they struggled last year. But I think success comes if their offense is as efficient without their star running back in Kareem Hunt. But they certainly need better linebacker and safety play, I think, to win the AFC West because the Chargers are coming. And the Broncos had a great draft. They're coming to take this crown.
I agree. It's going to be way more competitive this year in the West.
Certainly. And, I think the Chiefs are still Super Bowl contenders, maybe 12-4, 11-5, something like that would be about right. But I am looking forward to them playing the Patriots again, of course. Those are always some solid games. All right, and we got the hometown Minnesota Vikings. Miles.
All right. Definitely happy to talk about the Vikings, but I will try and keep it just as short as everyone else, as much as I could go on forever. Last year, disappointing year at 7-9 with one of the most hyped up signings last offseason with Kirk Cousins coming in for an $84 million guaranteed contract. Don't think he lived up to it quite this year. However, it was his best year in terms of completion percentage at 70%, most touchdowns in a season of 30 and 4,300 yards passing in his first year with us. I think there's still a lot to look forward to, and judging off of year one in the system is probably a mistake. So I think there's a lot to like. And of course, one of the best wide receiving duos in the game between Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, Thielen with a new contract extension as well, and Diggs is going to be staying here too. It's going to continue to be an offense that should be a passing attack. I think last year they laid off the gas when it came to really pushing Diggs to the max and Thielen as well. So I think looking to really, really center on an offensive passing attack is going to be big, even though it's not something that we've been used to since the days of Dante Culpepper. And I look forward to seeing if Dalvin Cook can return to form off of ACLs. We've seen great running backs come back off of terrible injuries in Minnesota before and have the best season in running back history just about with Adrian Peterson. So, there's potential for Cook to be good. And I think I like our pick out of Boise State, Alexander Madison, as well as pushing for time versus Amir Abdullah in the backfield. Defensively, what else can you say about this Minnesota defense? I think they're going to continue to be great. Harrison Smith is a Pro Bowl safety with the ability to play pretty much every position but nose tackle, it feels like. And Danielle Hunter is, in my opinion, the Greek freak of the NFL. He's got speed and power and is only getting better at the young age of 24 years old. He was fourth in sacks last year and second in the NFL in tackles for loss. So I think having him continue to get better is very, very scary for every quarterback in this North Division.
Certainly, and think of the names you didn't even say on our defense. Xavier Rhodes, Linval Joseph, our two running backs, our two linebackers, Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, are both solid. This team could be good this year. This team could be insane. I like our pick in the first and second round, actually. Not a lot of people like the Madison pick in the third round, but I thought he was good based on the fact that he's basically replacing Latavius Murray. But picking Garrett Bradbury to be your center, Elflein can move to guard, solves all our offensive line problems. We're only weak at left tackle now.
Yep.
And I think this could be a great year. Mike Zimmer goes down, up, down, up, down, up. We've seen that pretty much every season, and it's consistent. So
looks like an up year.
I hope so. I would certainly say they're a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think so. And I think people might be jaded from last year and say, they're just going to choke again. But I think to say that every year the Vikings choke is probably like you're not seeing the forest for the trees at that point. Like, we've gotten to NFC Championship games in recent years. Like, that's the opposite of choking. Choking is having a 5-11 season. Choking isn't getting to almost the last game and getting beaten by an incredible team.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think you're right. I think this team has a really good year, and their big competition is going to be the Bears this year.
Yep, and the Bears certainly got weaker, but we'll discuss that when we get to them. But overall, high hopes for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, of course. Couldn't expect any less. All right, and now the team that I thought won the draft this year, the Denver Broncos. And let's get straight into that AFC West competition aflow. Picking up Joe Flacco from the Ravens, it'll be another situation where, we have a quarterback who's been in a system for a long time, changing systems. It could be interesting. Undrafted Phillip Lindsay, he's solid. I think that O-line will do enough for him to have success this year. Emmanuel Sanders as your wide receiver 1. Nobody really talks about him. He's very underrated. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league. And, their draft strategy, moving down 10 picks and still getting Noah Fant out of Iowa. Holy cow, he's a starter. I'm picking him up in fantasy. Yes. And they moved down 10 picks and still got him. They also picked up Dalton Risner, solid safety, and they also got a possible quarterback of the future, Drew Lock, who a lot of people said was better than Daniel Jones. On defense, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, the two best pass rushers in the league as a pairing, other than maybe Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter. And Chris Harris Jr. as a safety, solid player. They're a little weak on defense, though, for me to say that confidently they're going to win the AFC West. I think they're going to be a fun offense to watch, but the defense could struggle a little bit. So I am going to say that, they're certainly in the playoff hunt. Don't get me wrong, 9, 10 wins, something like that would be...
Sounds about right.
They're the perfect match for a wild card team. Just good enough offense to get you there. But the defense is a little lacking. Especially
as we've talked about, the AFC feels like there's a lot of basement dwellers, a lot of low-win teams, so even a 10-win season could pick you up a wild card, whereas in the NFC, you might need 11 or 12 even for a wild card, it seems like.
For sure. But really, really exciting team to watch. I do think they won the draft this year. All right, the Jets out of New York. Okay, so another team currently that's getting there towards the end of their rebuild. They picked up Sam Darnold last year in the draft. Great quarterback. I think he just needed some line help last year. They have Le'Veon Bell now, who's always a target to watch. Robbie Anderson is a really good wide receiver 1 that not a lot of people know who he is. Leonard Williams and C.J. Mosley, they're going to be some players to watch on defense. Their secondary is a little weak, and their wide receivers are a little weak, so I think, improving those is going to help a lot. They improved their defensive line with Quinnen Williams out of Alabama as their 3rd overall pick. He doesn't do much in the pass rush, but wow, is he sure a run stuffer. So I think they definitely improved there. I actually think they're kind of close to the playoffs, maybe 8-8, 7-9, after with Sam Darnold's improvement. I think that's reasonable. Their defense is still a little weak, but they certainly can compete this year.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that the competition in their division is always fierce, but the addition of Le'Veon Bell can't be understated. I think that offense is 10 times better with him than without him. They probably wanted to pick up that Anthony Barr move in the offseason to improve that linebacking core, but I don't think that would have made the difference for them defensively.
No.
But they were already pretty strong defensively, so I think, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was going to say 7-9, something like that.
I think there's hope for 8-8, 9-7 if they really find some upset wins.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, heck, there's a chance that they could go 16-0. It's very small, but technically there's a chance.
There's always a chance for that.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah. I mean, the Jets can get some wins over the Dolphins and Bills this season. That can really help their chances into advancing to the playoffs. But if they don't, they're going to have a mid-round pick that they can use next year to get a good defensive end, because everybody and their mother picked up a defensive end in this year's draft. So not a lot of teams going to be looking for that next year. So I'm really looking for them to make some improvements next year.
Yep.
But for this year, we'll keep our picks a little safe.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, the next team staying in the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins. Wow.
Well, there you go. We talked about it a little bit earlier. They got a big new addition.
Yeah, Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick fighting out there in Miami. I think Josh Rosen is going to be the starter because obviously he's the future. They have a solid running back in Kenyon Drake and a top wide receiver in Kenny Stills. I can tell you they're really missing Jarvis Landry still. But, the offensive line is pretty weak, and they do have a good wide receiver too, but I can't remember what his name is. They picked him up from the Chiefs. And on defense, they pretty much only have Kiko Alonso and Xavier Howard. Those are their two players. They're a little weak getting pressure on the offense. Do they still have Cameron Wake? Is he still?
Believe so. Yep.
Okay.
I don't think he's moved on from them at this point. So yeah, that's still a defensive threat from Cameron Wake.
Okay. So maybe a little bit better than I thought at first, but I still think that they need to improve their secondary, and I think a top 10 pick would be a success this season, because they're still, probably going to try and rebuild with Josh Rosen as their quarterback. They got great value for him. Can we just talk about that trade? Holy cow.
Yeah, incredible.
They got him for pennies on the dollar. But I still think they're going to be a bottom-of-the-cellar team. And thankfully, we're through all the bottom-of-the-cellar teams in the AFC, so you don't have to hear me say that anymore, because it seems like I've said that a lot.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's okay, though. All right, moving on to the next pick. We have the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously our least favorite team.
Yeah, Philadelphia, coming out of the NFC East. I think they're probably the second best team in that division, pretty solidly. But finished 9-7 last year. Super Bowl hangover definitely seemed to hit them pretty hard. And it seems like now that Nick Foles is officially not an option to just come in and throw in some magic, it's really going to be up to Carson Wentz and how healthy he can stay to see how this offense will go. Zach Ertz is, in my opinion, the best tight end in the NFL. I'm sorry, I've got to take your Travis Kelce take.
Okay.
He was the second leading receiver in the entire NFL with 116 catches and was the ultimate safety net no matter who was under center for them, hauled in 8 touchdowns and 1,100 yards. I think Alshon Jeffrey is another player that takes the top off of defense and has great hands, and he just brought what he was doing in Chicago a couple of years ago over to the Eagles. And I think Jason Kelce is the best center in the league. He stonewalls elite defensive tackles every single Sunday. He was first-team All-Pro in the last 2 seasons at center and had only 4 penalties last year, and you can't ask for better than that from an offensive lineman. So I think this offense has a lot to be happy about if Carson Wentz comes back strong. And defensively, Fletcher Cox is a huge part of their defensive line. Led the team with 10.5 sacks. He's big enough to block a street, but still can get to the passer and was first-team All-Pro. Michael Bennett has the weirdest uniform design in the history of the NFL, but if it works, it works, and he had 9 sacks and 15 tackles for loss, which was pretty solid. And then Malcolm Jenkins anchors the back end. So I think the Eagles are good, but I think actually this 9-7 mark feels around what I expect from them, unless Jay Ajayi comes back and is like magical.
And also, to add to that, they picked up Jordan Howard for next to nothing from the Bears. That could be a lethal dual threat.
Absolutely true. They're definitely good at using their running backs based on their best possible ability. Look at Darren Sproles and how he's continued to be an option for them in the past, and Wendell Smallwood was pretty good last year too. So potentially Jordan Howard brings some balance, and this team could surprise still.
Yeah, of course. And, Chris Long on the defense is a solid pass rusher. I feel like nobody talks about him, and he's a great guy. He's a great pass rusher.
Best tattoo sleeve in the NFL? Sorry, Kyle Rudolph.
Ooh, okay. Okay, well, that's Philly. You think they're going to finish behind Dallas, though, correct?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
9-7. Okay. I can see that, certainly.